Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me. I have comedians dressing up in whiteface. I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO, and I have Candace Owens claiming I murdered my husband.
Overall, before we get to that, the response has just been brutal, okay? Everyone is calling her out. They're saying that the look is wrong. People are making fun of saying that she looks like she came dressed up as the assassin that was walking up the stairs, allegedly. All right, you guys, straight to jail. For questioning at least Erika. I don't care who's mad. I really do not care who wants to be upset after this episode. Really, you'll be wasting your...
Erika Kirk is done playing games, and she made that crystal clear by allegedly dragging Candace Owens into court over a jaw-dropping $10 million libel and defamation lawsuit. And if that wasn't enough, even Candace's own husband is reportedly done with her behavior, allegedly throwing his support behind Erika's case. Maybe that'll be the wake-up call Candace needs to stop making her entire career out of targeting a grieving widow. But here's where things get really uncomfortable. For 6 straight months, Candace has been on a relentless campaign against Erika Kirk, even dedicating a full investigative series to her. That part is facts. But despite all of that noise, Candace never once directly accused Erika of being responsible for her husband's passing. All she did was take publicly available information and spin content out of it, and that's a shaky foundation for winning a defamation or libel case.
I do not have time to address the noise. My silence does not mean that I am complacent. My silence does not mean that somehow Turning Point USA and all of the handpicked staff that loved my husband and my husband loved them is somehow in on it.
So now the streets are asking, is Erika genuinely fighting for her name, or is this lawsuit just a slick move to pull the spotlight back in her direction? Because Erika Kirk is not even pretending to be civil anymore. Sure, these two have been trading shots for a while, but there was at least a thin layer of civility keeping things together for Charlie's sake. That all collapsed the moment Erika got connected to the chaos surrounding the White House Correspondents' Dinner incident. Days later, she jumped on the Charlie Kirk show to address the shooting, the public's reaction, and her ongoing war with Candace. She made it clear she believes the internet is rotting everything, pointing directly at the months of relentless attacks she's faced. She even called out Dee by name, saying his white-faced skit cut deep. But what she said about Candace, that's what really made everyone stop and stare. Because according to Erika, Candace had repeatedly accused her of being responsible for her husband Charlie Kirk's passing, and that landed like a grenade. You could tell that was the moment Erika had been building toward the entire time.
I have to tell you, we have an even bigger problem when it comes to the systemic indoctrination and radicalization of our own citizens. This is what got my husband killed.
She talked for 9 straight minutes, but barely scratched the surface on the real concerns people had about TPUSA, or even the Correspondents' Dinner incident. She went after the press, accused them of dehumanizing her, but every single road led right back to that accusation against Candace. That's when people started raising eyebrows, because it felt less like a public statement and more like a personal score being settled with Candace planted right in the crosshairs. And let's keep it real, Erika didn't just snap out of nowhere. Ever since Charlie Kirk passed, Candace had been bouncing from theory to theory, and each one pulled more people into the fire. First, it was whispers about government involvement, then Israel, then France, and every time she spoke, the claims got heavier. That naturally started pulling in people close to Charlie, especially inside TPUSA. Candace accused members of lying, betraying him, even moving money the wrong way behind closed doors. And once that door cracked open, it didn't take long before Erika's name got dragged through it. When Candace spoke on Erika, she wasn't subtle about it. She painted her as someone untrustworthy, someone hiding things, someone who needed to be seriously looked into.
Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me. I have comedians dressing up in whiteface. I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO, and I have Candace Owens claiming I murdered my husband. And the list goes on and on and on.
At one point, she went as far as saying Erika should be arrested and questioned in connection to Charlie's passing, and that alone had people choosing sides before a single piece of proof hit the table. But then Candace took it even further, launching the Bride of Chucky series. And that's when it stopped feeling like commentary and started feeling deeply personal. She didn't just focus on recent events, she went all the way back. digging into Erika's past, her family, how she was raised, and every connection she'd ever had. Candace was basically calling Erika everything short of dangerous. She accused her of lying about her background, hinted at ties to powerful figures like Epstein, and even suggested connections to trafficking networks. And once claims like that get out into the world, they don't just vanish, they stick. So by the time Erika sat down to make her statement, this wasn't about one comment or one accusation anymore. She had built up a whole case file against Candace.
All right, you guys, straight to jail, for questioning at least Erika. I don't care who's mad. I really do not care who wants to be upset after this episode. If the situations were reversed and there were this many verifiable lies that Charlie told regarding the murder or assassination of his wife, Charlie would be in prison awaiting trial. And I actually agree with that assessment. We are way beyond coincidence. This is now a full-blown conspiracy.
But Candace wasn't about to let that statement breathe. The second Erika's comments started circulating, Candace jumped straight onto Twitter and fired back. She wrote, "Very uncomfortable to watch. Painful prompter read. A speech clearly written by someone else. Objectively terrible, so they will now pay for people to tell us otherwise. Also, of everything I've said about Erika, she chooses to respond to something I never said. They always lie." That last line made people stop mid-scroll because technically, Candace never came out and directly said Erika was responsible for Charlie's passing. Not in one clean, direct statement. But with all the theories, the accusations, and the insinuations she'd been dropping for months, people had already connected those dots themselves. So when Erika finally said it out loud, it felt like she was responding to the whole atmosphere Candace had been creating all along. But Candace didn't even try to meet her halfway. Instead, she hopped on her podcast and doubled down again, insisting she had never once lied about Erika. And at that point, it was clear she was turning this into a full credibility war who's telling the truth and who can actually back it up. Because accusing someone of defamation is one thing, but proving legal liability is a completely different battle. And that's exactly where things started getting really uncomfortable for Erika. The moment Candace pushed back, Erika's side was not staying quiet, not even for a second. Almost immediately, receipts started circulating, and one in particular spread like wildfire.
So yeah, across the board, people are laughing, they're mocking it, they're saying it was, you're lying, and also it's just weird. It was weird and it was awkward. And speaking of the lying, which, like I said, many people called out right away, as that person said, I've never made that statement on this podcast.
It allegedly showed Candace texting a former TPUSA employee right before that sit-down meeting with Erika, the meeting that was publicly framed as a chance for both sides to clear the air and settle things privately. But that screenshot told a completely different story. In the exchange, the employee asked Candace what she planned to say to Erika during the meeting, and Candace reportedly responded, "I'm asking everything." First question, why did you murder your husband? Followed by crying emojis. The second that line hit the internet, everything shifted. For Erika's supporters, that was the smoking gun they'd been waiting for. It didn't matter that it might have been casual a statement like that, even dressed up as a joke, fed directly into the narrative Candace had been building for months. People started sharing it everywhere, screenshotting it, dissecting every word. Was it sarcasm? Was it a genuine slip? Was it something in between? The internet wasn't waiting around for an official answer, they were already forming their own verdicts in real time. But Candace wasn't about to just absorb that hit and go silent. She came right back and shut it down hard, saying people were reaching.
The reason that she gives for people asking that question, why did you go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner? You literally just said you couldn't do your UGA commitment because there were credible threats and you couldn't trust the Secret Service to absolve them. Then you did an event with Trump, which relied upon the Secret Service, and then now you're doing another event and it's like a press event. Right? That actually Charlie hated. He always made fun of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So why do you feel obliged to show up here?
According to her, the crying emojis made the tone obvious it was sarcasm, plain and simple. She basically argued that if this is what Erika's entire defamation case is resting on, then it would crumble before it ever got within 10 feet of a courtroom. And she had a point that her legal team would likely lean into context matters in defamation law. And a text message with crying emojis attached is a shaky foundation to build a multi-million-dollar lawsuit on. But here's the thing, legal arguments and public perception are two very different battles. and Candace was losing one of them fast. Because the court of public opinion doesn't care about legal technicalities. People saw that message, and regardless of the emojis, it confirmed what many already believed, that Candace had been privately pushing a narrative that she was publicly dressing up as just asking questions. That gap between what she said on camera and what she allegedly texted behind closed doors, that's what really lit the internet up, and once that kind of doubt gets planted, it's almost impossible to dig it back out. Now, here's where it really got wild, even with all that pressure mounting from every direction, including whispers that her own husband might be quietly throwing his support behind Erika. Candace did not flinch, not even slightly. She didn't pull a single piece of content down. She didn't soften her language. She didn't issue any kind of clarifying statement designed to cool things off. If anything, she came back even sharper, even more focused, like the pressure was actually fueling her rather than slowing her down. She pivoted and started pressing Erika with a whole new set of pointed questions that caught a lot of people off guard.
Shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie.
One of the biggest ones she kept circling back to was simple: why was Erika even at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in the first place? And that question hit different when you factor in the context. Charlie Kirk was openly and loudly critical of the mainstream press. He mocked that dinner specifically more than once on record. It was practically a symbol of everything his movement stood against: the elite media bubble, the self-congratulatory journalism world he spent years calling out. So Candace leaned into that contrast hard, basically suggesting that Erika showing up to that event wasn't just a personal choice, it was a statement. And not one that lined up with the image of a grieving widow staying true to her husband's values. That angle resonated with a specific segment of the audience that had already been skeptical of Erika. To them, it wasn't just about the dinner, it was about a pattern they felt they were seeing. A pattern of Erika positioning herself in spaces that felt inconsistent with who Charlie Kirk publicly was. And Candace was deliberately connecting those dots, one by one, letting her audience draw their own conclusions while technically never making a direct accusation. Then she pushed it even further and went straight for what she called hypocrisy, and this part genuinely caught people's attention. She pointed out that Erika had publicly criticized journalists for pulling out their phones and recording during the chaos of the shooting at the Correspondents' Dinner. Erika framed it as disrespectful, opportunistic, and a perfect example of everything wrong with modern media. Strong words, powerful delivery, and people responded to it. But then Candace flipped the script and pointed out that someone connected to TPUSA's own inner circle had allegedly done the exact same thing during the incident surrounding Charlie's passing recording when many felt it.
Pretty sure that when she sat down with Caroline Levitt on stage at a Turning Point event, she says that she doesn't read the headline, she doesn't care, she's completely removed. We've been told over and over again that she's just not aware of what's going on. Now she's saying, I actually went to this event because I needed to confront these journalists who day in and day out, I actually know their names, which is more than I can say. I actually don't know the names of all journalists who write articles about me. I don't care to learn about their lives. I actually virtually never give them statements. My PR isn't open.
Was deeply inappropriate to do so. The parallel was sharp, and Candace made sure nobody missed it. That move reframed the entire conversation. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Candace versus Erika anymore. It became a question of whether Erika was holding journalists to a standard that people in her own circle weren't being held to. And in the world of political commentary, that kind of perceived double standard can do serious damage to someone's credibility, especially when you've built your public image around authenticity and grief. But Candace still wasn't done, because she had one more angle she kept returning to, and it might have been the most damaging one of all. She zeroed in on Erika's own words and used them against her, because throughout this entire saga, Erika had presented herself as someone deliberately staying above the chaos. She said publicly that she wasn't reading headlines, wasn't engaging with the noise, wasn't letting the online attacks consume her. She painted a picture of a woman focused on her family, on healing, on preserving Charlie's legacy through TPUSA. That was the narrative she wanted people to hold on to. But then, in nearly the same breath, Erika admitted that she went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner specifically because she wanted to confront the journalists she felt had been treating her unfairly. She wanted to look them in the eye. She wanted to address it directly. And the second she said that, Candace was on it like a hawk. Because you cannot simultaneously claim you're ignoring the media circus and then show up to one of the most high-profile media events of the year specifically to confront the people in it. Those two things simply do not coexist, and Candace made sure her audience understood exactly why that mattered. That contradiction became Candace's sharpest weapon in this whole battle. She kept returning to it, kept pressing on it from different angles, kept asking the questions she knew her audience was already thinking. If Erika was truly above all of this, why did she keep inserting herself into the middle of it? Why the statement? Why the dinner? Why the lawsuit? And why, after months of saying she didn't want the spotlight, did every single move she makes seem specifically designed to pull it straight back to her? Now, at this point, something else started happening underneath all the noise that a lot of people weren't paying close enough attention to. The lawsuit itself began getting scrutinized in a serious way by people with actual legal backgrounds who started weighing in publicly. And the consensus was not exactly encouraging for Erika's side. Legal commentators pointed out that defamation cases, especially against public figures and commentators, are notoriously difficult to win in the United States. The bar is high, the burden of proof is heavy, and the plaintiff has to demonstrate actual malice, meaning the person making the statements either knew they were false or showed reckless disregard for the truth. And that's where Candace's strategy started making a lot more sense to people watching closely. Because throughout everything, every theory, every series, every tweet, Candace had been careful, uncomfortably careful. She framed things as questions. She cited publicly available information. She said she was just doing research, just asking what the media wouldn't. That kind of framing, intentional or not, creates a legal cushion that's genuinely hard to pierce. And the more legal voices started explaining that dynamic online, the more some of Erika's supporters began quietly wondering whether this lawsuit was ever really about winning in court or whether it was about something else entirely. Because here's the reality that nobody in either camp really wants to say out loud: a $10 million lawsuit, even one that never makes it to trial, changes the entire conversation. It shifts the power dynamic. It forces Candace to spend money on legal defense. It puts her team in discovery mode, where they have to start handing over communications, texts, emails, internal documents. And suddenly, all those private conversations that Candace assumed were just between her and her team, they become part of a legal record. Which means that screenshot the one with the crying emojis might just be the beginning of what surfaces if this case actually moves forward. And that possibility is what has both sides looking over their shoulders right now. Because if Erika's legal team gets access to discovery, and more messages like that one start coming out, it stops being about public perception and starts being about documented evidence. The emojis won't matter as much when a judge is looking at a pattern of communication over several months. Context in a courtroom works very differently than context on social media. So, where does that leave everything? Both women are dug in, neither showing any signs of backing down, and the audience watching this unfold is more divided than ever. Candace's supporters see a commentator being targeted for daring to ask uncomfortable questions. Erika's supporters see a widow being relentlessly targeted by someone using media influence as a weapon. And somewhere in the middle of all of that is the truth, which, depending on what comes out in these legal proceedings, might end up looking very different from what either side has been selling. What's undeniable is that this situation has taken on a life completely its own. It started as grief, turned into suspicion, exploded into public accusations, and has now landed inside the American legal system. And with Candace's husband reportedly distancing himself from her position, with receipts still floating around online, and with a $10 million lawsuit sitting over everything like a storm cloud, this is nowhere near over. If anything, it feels like the whole thing is just getting started. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Whose side are you on? And do you think this lawsuit actually has a shot in court? If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button, share it with someone who's been following this situation, and make sure you subscribe so you're never the last one to know when things pop off. See you on the next one.